Back on the show that covers everything in the South. This is y'all, and it's time for our Big 12 report. We go to our Big 12, our insider for that conference, Matt Heermans, to discuss all things Big 12. And this is the show that covers all things college football as we're wrapping up the regular season of college football over these next few days, and then conference championships taking place somewhere around December 19th. But let's bring on our Big 12 insider, Matt Heermans. And Matt, I got on, you might not have seen it, I've got on my red today in honor of the new football capital of the Big 12 Conference.
Are you talking about Ames, Iowa?
Yes, the best four-letter word out there, AMES.
That's right. Yeah. I think, what's funny is I feel like we talk about this, we've definitely talked about this before, how Iowa State every year, it seems like they're just stumbling to get out of the gate, and then by the time we hit this point in the season, you do not want to play them. And this is kind of another situation this year where they, it didn't look like they were going to set the world on fire the first couple games, and then look who's sitting at the top, right? So Matt Campbell, another incredible job coaching. Getting pretty close to being able to ride his own ticket, I think, wherever he wants to go, which, he may have some possibilities here in the near future. But really been a good season, and this has kind of been the modus operandi for Iowa State. Don't look like world beaters, but before you know it, they're ranked and they're kind of pounding people towards the end of the year. So, yeah.
And a big part of that, Matt, is your Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week. Brock Purdy, what a great job he had in that WVU game.
Yeah, he's a heck of a player. And I know we've talked about Mr. Purdy before, but, he struggled a little bit to start the season. There's no doubt about that. But just a great football player. He's got enough running ability, athletic ability to get loose and make plays with his feet. He's got a good enough arm, and he's very accurate. He's just one of these guys, kind of reminds you of maybe a Drew Brees, maybe even a Russell Wilson type, where he moves around enough to get loose and makes him real dangerous. Not a guy that's going to sprint up the gut for 80 yards every time, but he's a heck of an athlete. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of his, and he's had a great year and a great week, obviously, last week. But Iowa State goes the way he goes, and he's been playing pretty well.
And the Cyclones punching their ticket to the Big 12 Conference Championship. They'll take on Oklahoma. More on the Sooners in a second. Looking at the standings, Matt Heermans, just behind the Sooners, you've got the Longhorns and the Cowboys currently at 5-3. They'll miss out on the chance to win a championship here this year. TCU, a better than 500 performance thus far at 5-4. The Nears at 4-4. Then K-State at 4-5. Texas Tech 3-6. Baylor at 2-6. And then Les Miles and those Jayhawks still struggling at 0-8. Your thoughts on the rest of the conference before we set up this conference championship game?
Well, it's been a strange year, and that's not just because of all the issues we're dealing with the virus and all that, but Texas looked, a few weeks back they looked, well, put it this way, the Tom Herman looked like he was in serious trouble, and he may still be in serious trouble.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. What is this whole Urban Meyer speculation?
Yeah, so I don't think you're going to see Urban Meyer as the head coach of the University of Texas. I think if anybody watched Kirk Herbstreit this last week, and I guess he's watchable again if he's got his head on straight. But he had some interesting things to say about the University of Texas, and I think part of that may be because Tom Herman has taken a lot of slings and arrows, if you want to put it that way. And, he's an Ohio State guy, and Kirk Herbstreit is an Ohio State guy. And, we all have our affinities for folks. So maybe some of that's going on. But he did have some accurate things to say about the University of Texas, and, things that I've talked about before and we've discussed on this show before about the University of Texas being not quite the program that maybe the supporters and the boosters and the people who imagine it to be. In other words, the reality of the history of the Longhorn program is not quite what they would like it to be or imagine it to be. And he basically said that, which obviously has gotten people in Austin riled up. Not that Austin needs to get any more riled up for any reason, but yeah. So I think what he's basically doing is giving kind of a signal out there that this job is dangerous. I mean, this is a dangerous job. We've talked about it before. It's got every resource on earth. The University of Texas has more money, more facilities, more clout, more, glowing media coverage, more everything you could imagine. There's not a program in this country that has more going on than the University of Texas does. Not Alabama, even. When it comes to money and resources and things like that. Now, of course, fan base and support, that's a little different. But when it comes to being able to reach into a bag of whatever it wants, the University of Texas is second to absolutely no one on in this country. So, however, it's hard to win there. It is more difficult than people think to win there. And, we could probably spend an hour talking about the reasons for that. But Mack Brown was the last coach to have significant success. He won a national championship and they fired him. Prior to that, it was Darrell Royal. So, I mean, this is not Alabama. This is not Clemson. This is not, I would say, not even Florida necessarily. When you look at the history, you just don't roll in and start winning national championships at the University of Texas. You just don't. But they think you do, and they might pay you like you will. But as you see with Tom Herman right now, he's sitting 7-3, or I think that's his. Yeah, I think he's maybe 6-3. Either way, he bounced back well this year, and he's still on an extremely hot seat. So that's kind of an interesting situation. I don't think Urban Meyer is going to be headed that way because I think he understands that.
We are talking with Matt Heermans. This is the Y'all Show. This is our Big 12 report of the Y'all Show. And I have to ask you this, since we cover the entire South here on this program. This is our Big 12 report. But Matt Heermans, the rise of Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies, how is that playing into Texas and their decision about going forward?
Well, I can tell you that is playing very much into the University of Texas and their kind of desperation here. Texas A&M historically has done, this is not a slight, to the Aggie fans out there, but they have done far less than the University of Texas has done on the football field. They won a contested national championship in 1939, and that's it. They won a few conference championships in the Southwest Conference, but they do not have the history that Texas has, and the University of Texas understands that, and they want that to continue. And they, the fact that they went out and literally backed up a Brinks truck to Jimbo Fisher a few years back and handed him the keys to the back of that vehicle. Texas said, that's fine. We're going to hire Tom Herman. He's the most sought after coach at the time. And Jimbo has struggled, but not this year at all. It's coming together for him. The recruiting classes are coming together for him, and it is rainbows and sunshine, and it's a weird season. Texas A&M has missed, I think, maybe the best offense in the SEC due to sickness. But in Ole Miss, they got to miss that game, and that's a program doesn't have a defense, but is putting up a lot of points, a lot of yards against everybody it comes in front of. So they've caught some breaks, that's true, but they're sitting in the top 10, top 5, depending on the poll, and the University of Texas knows that. So they're not happy about that, and you can guarantee that if the seat's at 80 degrees and toasty, that every time Jimbo comes on the screen and every time they see that top 5 ranking, that you're talking electric chair style warmth when it comes to Tom Herman. So yeah, it's a thing. It's definitely a thing.
Well, if it wasn't bad enough for Longhorn fans to see the rise of A&M in the top five with an outside shot at possibly playing for a national championship, if that was not enough to get Horns fans riled up, Matt Heermans, I've got a graphic that will make them riled up even more. Are you ready for this graphic?
Let's see it.
It's a graphic that's kind of a recurring theme. It's like deja vu all over again for Oklahoma. Championship bound, the Sooners.
Yep, that's pretty much every year. It seems like that's much to the chagrin of the Oklahoma State Cowboys, who I think at some point this year believed that they had the chance to be the Oklahoma school going to the championship game, but has not turned out. Lincoln Riley has really turned things around in Norman, and unfortunately, Mike Gundy's team has sort of fallen off just a little bit. But yeah, I mean, there's a phrase that the University of Texas that they always have, and they say, well, it's noon on whatever date it is, and OU still something negative. However, it's pretty much December every single year, and the University of Oklahoma is in the Big 12 championship game. That's really the little saying. People who know that saying will understand it, but pretty much clockwork, like you said. Every year, just go ahead and pencil Oklahoma in. At this point, you might as well use a pen. You can stick them in there every year.
And not only do they get to that championship game, I can't even remember who's won the Big 12 championship besides Oklahoma. I can't even remember who it was.
Texas a few years ago, but pretty much it's been Oklahoma over the last decade. You've had Oklahoma State challenge. You've had Iowa State, I think one other time get there in the past. No, I could be wrong.
I don't think Iowa State's ever made the championship.
Okay. Well, they've challenged for it, I guess. I think Kansas State. I apologize. I think Kansas State has been there as well. But Oklahoma pretty much wins it every year.
And they have a chance to win it again here coming up on the 19th, as the Big 12 championship will be taking place in Arlington, and it will feature those Sooners and the Iowa State Cyclones. Brock Purdy versus Spencer Rattler. Tell me your thoughts on this championship game, assuming we're going to have it.
Yeah, that's a good disclaimer. I think we'll have it. I hope we have it. But I think it's a great matchup. I'm really looking forward to this. This has been a weird season, to get excited about. But I'm actually excited about this game. Iowa State and Oklahoma are both kind of on an upward trajectory. It's always good for me to see. I like to see a program that doesn't make it every year. Not an Oklahoma and a Texas, not even a program that honestly is overlooked quite a bit within the Big 12 conference, and of course nationally. I mean, this is like, that major conference school that has kind of USC colors and a bird on the helmet. Nobody really knows anything. I mean, it's not something that comes up. Iowa certainly steals the thunder in that state, but Iowa State has sneakily been maybe the better program over the last 10 years than Iowa, maybe even longer than that. But I think it's a great matchup. I think what you're going to have is two quarterbacks that kind of make these offenses go. Iowa State does not want to get into a Lincoln Riley shootout for sure. Iowa State wants to slow it down a little bit. They're not a team that wants to win, 10-3, but they're not a Lincoln Riley sling it all over the field, get rolling and score 65 points either. They want to have a balanced offense. They want to run play action. They want to use Brock Purdy rolling out, using his legs to keep the defense honest. They want to have long, sustained drives, whereas Lincoln Riley wants big defensive plays. He wants turnovers. He wants to throw the ball down the field and essentially sling it all over. That's his style. He's a Mike Leach disciple, and he's made it work there. So I like the matchup. I tend to like the Iowa State defense a little more than I like the Oklahoma defense. Iowa State has shown some real resiliency on defense, particularly as the season has worn on. And in some of these football games, the Iowa State defense has gotten stronger, it seems like, as the game has progressed, whereas Oklahoma, maybe not so much. They really just want to outscore you. Oklahoma does this year, and honestly, most other years. So I think it's interesting. It's really, in my opinion, it's going to come down to the Lincoln Riley Oklahoma offense versus the very resilient Iowa State defense. Yes, Brock Purdy is going to make his mark. Yes, the Oklahoma defense is going to have to contend with kind of long drives and different things that Matt Campbell's going to throw at them. But I think the game turns on whether or not that Iowa State defense can stay with the Oklahoma offense, can get some turnovers, can get in the backfield, break through the offensive line. And if they can do that, I think they can speed the game up, if you will, as far as the clock, not speed up as far as the tempo, but speed the clock up. And I think they've got a good shot at winning. I'll take Iowa State in this game.
Whoa.
And a close one. I'll take them by 3. I just think that defense is good enough to throw a monkey wrench in that Oklahoma offense.
And if the spinning storm out of Ames somehow finds the way to win this ball game, Matt Heermans, it will be their first conference championship since I think the days of the Missouri Valley Conference, and it would have been in the early 1900s. I think before World War I was last time Iowa State won a conference championship.
It's been a minute, as they say. Yeah. It's a couple conferences ago too. So
that was two pandemics back. They won a conference championship.
That's right. The Spanish flu.
Before the Spanish flu, yes.
Yeah. Okay. It might have been like yellow fever, but I will say this too. This game means more to Iowa State, period. Doesn't matter. It just does. Oklahoma's not in the hunt for national championship. So Iowa State winning the Big 12 conference, this is vastly, vastly more important to Iowa State than it is for Oklahoma, period.
And you mentioned Matt Campbell, a name out there in the coaching ranks. I thought his name would pop up in Columbia, South Carolina, as they were looking for a head coach of the Gamecocks. I never heard his name mentioned, but Shane Beamer, oddly enough, an assistant there for Lincoln Riley and Norman, he is now the new head coach at South Carolina. What can you tell me about his days in Norman and a part of the Oklahoma offense?
Yeah, so what this tells me is that the SEC is now the fully on board the offensive spread train for sure. I mean, you've got A&M, you've got Ole Miss, you've got obviously now South Carolina is going to import a Lincoln Riley, which is a Mike Leach type deal. You've got a lot of offenses in the SEC, and whatever people want to say about this year is probably valid, but the defenses in the SEC not exactly impressive this year. It's been an offensive league, period, and I think it will be moving forward. And I think a lot of this has to do with, I think, the matchups that the SEC has had against conferences like the Big 12. They've won their fair share for sure, and Alabama has certainly dominated. But at the same time, teams like Oklahoma have come in with bad defenses and just dropped 1,000 yards on some of these SEC defenses, and it just has happened. And so I think that was. You can look at Alabama and you look at some of the offensive changes they've made. Now you look at South Carolina, you look at teams all over, you look at Ole Miss. I mean, there's not a whole lot of difference now in some of these SEC offenses than the slinging around Big 12 style offenses they're just having. And they, this is something that, that they made fun of years ago, but this is just the trend. Okay. This is what's happening. And I think Shane Beamer gets the job because he runs that type of offense, or he is expected to run that type of offense because that's what Lincoln Riley does. Now, make no mistake, that offense at Oklahoma is Lincoln Riley's offense. But what Shane Beamer's been able to do is essentially learn it inside and out. And now I guarantee he's going to take that to South Carolina, and you're going to see an Oklahoma-style offense at South Carolina, guaranteed. And that type of offense, for all these struggles, I will say this about Oklahoma. For the struggles they've had on defense, there is not a top program that they have not put up a lot of points on when they've met in the postseason, whether it's Alabama, doesn't matter who it's been, whether it's Kyler Murray, everybody has rolled in and put up a ton of points and yards on whatever stout defense, whatever heralded defense they've matched up against. Now, they haven't won a lot of those games because they haven't been able to field the defense. But they have, and I think the SEC noticed that, and I think South Carolina noticed that, and I think they say, I want some of that. And I think that's what they're going to get.
And as you mentioned, whether it was Rattler this year or Jalen Hurts or Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, every year it seemed there was a new quarterback in Norman, and it didn't matter. They just restocked, reloaded, and came at you with a national championship contending team in most of those years. Matt Heermans, again, he's going with the Iowa State Cyclones as the favorite in that championship game for the Big 12. And we appreciate you coming on and sharing your Big 12 knowledge with us here on the Y'all Show, sir.
Happy to be here.
And we're not done with you. Stand by. When we come back, Matt Heermans is going to be right back with us, and he's going to switch over from the Big 12 to barbecue. And we'll have that conversation coming up right after this on Y'all Talk with a Southern Accent. Hang on. We'll be right back, y'all.